Barr, and I am here with the League of Women Voters of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County. We want to thank you for being here this evening. It is my distinct privilege to introduce to you Mary Catherine Sevier, who is one of the co-presidents of our chapter, and she will do a welcome.
Thank you, Dottie. Thank you all so much for being here. It is my pleasure to welcome you. I'm delighted for us to all be here and to be able to address a televised audience as well as we hear from these important, this distinguished panel on these important issues of school capacity and population growth. I need to remind you that the League of Women Voters is a strictly nonpartisan organization. We address issues that affect the community. Our mission is empowering voters and defending democracy. We would be honored if you would consider joining us in this mission. You may do so by going to our website, and we hope that you'll join us at future events. Our next one will be in April, and you can learn more about that as well. I'm now delighted to introduce to you Mayor Jason Cole from the City of Laverne.
Well, good evening. I just wanted to take a moment to welcome everybody to Vergne City Hall, and we're very grateful that the League of Women Voters is hosting this forum where obviously tonight this panel will solve overcrowding, correct? No pressure, guys, no pressure. But thank you all for being here, and with that said, I will turn it over to the panelists.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I'll be moderating tonight's forum on school overcrowding and the way forward. As Bobby mentioned earlier, we'll begin tonight's program with a presentation from the superintendent on school funding. Dr. Sullivan.
All right, thank you all. So I'm Jimmy Sullivan, the proud superintendent director of schools, means the same exact thing, of Rutherford County Schools. So quickly, Rutherford County Schools has just under 52,000 students. We're the fourth largest district in the state of Tennessee, right behind Knox County, Metro Nashville, and then Memphis Shelby. So we are the fourth largest school system. We have 50 schools that range in size from about 240 for our smallest elementary school, all the way up to a large comprehensive high school, Stewart's Creek High School, which is 2,480. I have an enviable task of making sure to hit how we are funded in about 5 minutes. And so I'm going to go over just a couple quick things, and then I have a PowerPoint that I can share with you afterwards so that everyone can see how it works. So a couple just basics about funding. Rutherford County is part of Rutherford County government. So Rutherford County Schools is part of Rutherford County government. From a budgetary standpoint, that means we are in a centralized accounting structure. So our school board has the ability to purchase things, set our own budget, but we have to, for funding, go to the county commission under Rutherford County government for all of the funding aspect. And so that's a big portion that is very important for our public to realize, is that our school board does not have taxing authority, and we don't have the authority to go out and secure new revenue. We are governed by the Private Act of 1975, which puts in place how all of our operations work. So let's talk a little bit about how that works. Our budget calendar starts in December. Tennessee Code Annotated gives a strict outline of how we have to go through a budget process, and it starts with principals. Principals go through and they have to give us feedback on what they need for staffing, capital improvements, instruction, technology, hardware. They have individual meetings with myself and my leadership team. We do the same thing with our central office staff. Our school board starts getting that information in February. We then compile all of that information so that we have a board retreat in March. And by that point, we hope to, from our State Department, have a little bit of an idea of what type of state funding we're going to receive. And it goes all the way from December until the last Monday in June, to where we hopefully get it approved by the county commission. So it is a 6-month long process that our school system works on, and we talk about just about every board meeting in some aspect. And so let's talk about just a couple different ways that their funds look at. For our school system, we look at 4 different funds. The first one we're going to talk about is the big one. It's Fund 141. So that is an important number to remember. Fund 141 is general purpose school funds. Just about everything that you think of that happens in a school happens in that budget. It is $518 million. So that is a shocking number when you hear it, $518 million. But I want to put that into perspective a little bit. Out of 142 districts in the state, Rutherford County is funded 117th out of 142. So it is a large number, but per pupil, we do much more with less. And so that's something we're proud of, but we are to the point where the rubber's kind of met the road a little bit. It goes everywhere from teacher salaries to medical insurance to textbooks to computers to custodial software. It basically covers everything of how we operate as a district. So that's 141. 143 is another one. That is our centralized cafeteria. The best way I know how to describe a centralized cafeteria is to think of it as a restaurant. It is self-funded. It does not rely on taxpayer funding. It is totally funded by lunch payments and USDA reimbursements for free and reduced lunch. And so that's another fund that we have to look at. Fund 177 is what we call capital projects. So we've looked at 141, the big one so far, 143, the cafeteria, and now 177, which is a little bit unique to Rutherford County. That goes back over 2 decades with a former county commissioner, Commissioner Bullen, who called it the Bullen nickel. And so it was basically a nickel of the property tax went to making sure that we could go and take care of deferred maintenance. The school system over the last couple years has actually put more of our operating money into this fund so that we could try to get a handle on some of our deferred maintenance. Unfortunately, at the same time, inflation has really soared. And so where we used to be able to do a HVAC or air conditioning system for $1.5 million or $2 million, now we're looking at $7 or $8 million for every HVAC system that we look to replace. So that fund is about $19 million a year. So we look at replacing 2 HVAC systems and then any other maintenance that occurs. And so that's 177. And then the last one is the one we're going to talk quite a bit about tonight, I'm sure, is Fund 189. 189 is where we build buildings out of. New building, new construction, renovations, additions, all of those come out of 189. Unfortunately, the largest majority of that is also funded by property tax. It is funded by the adequate school facilities tax, which is roughly around $1 a square foot. But without getting too far into it, that's where we are looking for new revenue streams because that just isn't enough to be able to build $1 a square foot for our schools to be able to look. The other part of that Fund 189 is we have to issue bonds from our county commission. So again, the school system cannot go and just say we need a building and to build new buildings. We have to go get funding approved from our county commission. We have been able to fund $30 million of a new elementary school using some of our savings account, if you will. We call it fund balance, but the rest of it has to come from funding from the county commission. It's not just that the county commission has to look at property tax, they also have to look at our debt ratio, which if you're thinking about it as your credit score, you want it at the very highest level for you to be able to borrow. And so when you hear in the public they can't go borrow anymore, it's not that our county is not in a great spot, it's that if we go borrow more money, then our credit score is going to take a little bit of a dip. It's the best way I know how to explain it. The last part we're going to hit on quickly is the state did have a new funding mechanism. It is called TISA, and so that is the new funding mechanism that has really allocated a lot of extra funds to Rutherford County and to all districts for the most part across the state. We are now looking at, from a local perspective, the local county commission funded maintenance of effort, which is all we asked for. That is the legal minimum that the county is required to ask or to fund. So maintenance of effort, right at about $190 million. The state is sending us about 330. And so that's it. That is that $518 to $520 million. So you hear a lot about the local tax base, but we receive the largest majority of our funding from the state. So hope that was a quick little 5-6 minute overview of how we are funded.
Thank you, Dr. Sullivan. In case I didn't mention it, my name is Cheryl Griffith. But now I would like to share how this discussion will work. There was a request that we provide assigned questions to each panelist, which we have provided. However, we welcome all comments on any question from any panelist. There will be 2 rounds of questions, with each panel member being asked 1 question during each round. After the panelist answers the question within 2 minutes, everyone else will be asked if they would like to respond to that question. We do encourage you to feel free to provide your own insights into a question that has been responded to by another panelist. If several of you wish to comment, we will select 3 additional responses allocated with 1 minute response time for each question asked. If no one asks to respond, I will consider calling on another panel member or 2 for their thoughts. This is likely to occur when the question relates to both the school system and the county. Now let us begin. The first question is directed to Commissioner Wilson and Mrs. Bratton. Please advise us as to the role the school system and county government plays in responding to new housing developments in Rutherford County. How do the various levels of government interact on this matter? When is each government entity informed or engaged in the process of learning about upcoming developments that have been proposed or approved? Either one may begin.
You want to go ahead, Phil?
I'd be happy to, sure. First of all, hello, everyone. It's going to be a very exciting night. I forgot to wear my hearing aids. So, Dr. Sullivan, I look at you and I'm saying this. I didn't catch what you said. Chances are we've probably already talked about it, though. So let me go ahead and start by, I'm going to kind of dig in and give you some answers from checking with all of the mayors around town, because I went into this question and said, let me ask everyone how they're communicating, because that's basically what we're trying to know. Now, obviously, Dr. Sullivan can and Ms. Bratton can talk about how the school system is getting updated, but I find the communication up to this point to be pretty terrible. And let me kind of explain what I mean by that. I talked to Doug DeMasi. He is the county's planning director. Okay, that's for Rutherford County. So you got to remember, we've got municipalities, dominantly Laverne, Smyrna, Murfreesboro be the ones I'm speaking of. And then when I talk about Doug in the county, it's the county's planning director. They have been providing, I believe, a lot updates. Now, I said, Doug, for the school board members that don't understand real estate and development, what does a lot update even do for them? Is that practical? And that's still a question that is not. So I said, okay, so that's not a good answer. How many would you feel comfortable if you know what lot permits were pulled, what that means for students? I think we can do better. And actually, Jason Cole and I have a wonderful banter back and forth constantly, monthly, about the staggering amount of permits pulled in various stages, from development all the way through to a building. You have to remember that the way funding works, it's so slow, it'll drive you insane. By the time we think we need something and we can discuss getting money for it, it's going to be 2 or 3 years before the doors open. So we need a high school in this north end. We are absolutely on fire. We're talking about buying land to do that. We're not even to getting the funding yet for that high school. We just approved the elementary school. I'm going to stop there on this subject and stick to the one you asked me to finish my 2 minutes. The communication needs to be better, and I'm going to tell you, I talked to some of you guys in November and exposed this issue. Talked to Mayor Carr, found out communication was pretty bad between everyone. When I talked to Doug a few days ago, we are going to reach out to the mayors and the planning directors and try to get a meeting with Dr. Sullivan to say, here's the information we have. How can we get it to you in a practical manner that turns into when you will need seats for students in those developments?
Thank you.
Thank you. As Commissioner Wilson just said, the communication is a little lacking. We don't always find out about things. Thank God for Tammy Sharp, who will come in and say, okay, folks, 1,100 permits were just approved.
1,000.
Yeah, 1,000, okay.
1,000.
Just 1,100, okay. But what I want you all to understand is the school system has absolutely no jurisdiction over developments. When people say to us, why don't you stop building houses? Well, we don't. We build schools, and we have to go on the build it and they will come theory, but we have to put a school where somebody else decides to put a development, and it makes it very, very difficult. So as Commissioner Wilson has said, I'm hoping that we have a little bit better communication than just not knowing where things are going.
Thank you. The next question is for Dr. Sullivan and Commissioner Oliver. What are your views on the governor's proposal to have a statewide tax-funded school voucher program for that will cost $144 million for $20,000 for the first year where there is no income eligibility requirements, especially since Rutherford County Schools is not fully funded.
We did it for you.
I
can
can
hit-
go first.
Perfect.
I would first like to say good evening. I'm Commissioner Hope Oliver, and my district is District 1, which is primarily Lake Forest, and I'm happy to be here. Now, the question was, how do I view or feel about the governor's voucher proposal? I don't feel good about it at all. Basically, it is government subsidies for the rich. It's interesting how the legislator doesn't want to subsidize or give assistance to those who truly need it, but they want to give this taxpayer money to people who are already paying for private school. Now, granted, it states that it's only $144 million to start off with, but if every student that is currently in private school, whose parents are currently paying for them to be in private school, gets funded, we're looking at $780 million. So you tell me what you think about that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes.
I'll hit on as well, and I just want to iterate that this is my view. I don't represent the school board, so this is Director of Schools' viewpoint. Definitely concerns. I'm not against competition, not against making sure that you are doing the best you possibly can. I think where we have the biggest amount of concerns is just the lack of consistency between the two. For example, we spend a ton of time preparing for all of our assessments that we have to give, rightfully so. There's been a lot of attention around third grade. And so what a third grade parent could rightfully do right now is if they are not on what the state views as grade level reading in third grade, they would have to go through fourth grade tutoring, or they could unenroll their student and take a voucher and go to a private school and then not have to do third grade. And so for Director of Schools, we just want equal. As long as you have equal systems, playing by the same rules, the same playing field, then we'll compete with anybody. But there has to be some type of level playing field that we're all competing on the same thing.
Thank you. Does
I would like to
anyone?
rebut, not
Okay.
rebut, but I have an additional comment. When you talk about parents being able to take their students out of public school to put in private school, not everybody's going to be able to do that. Because granted, when you go to these private schools, okay, the voucher is $10,000, but the tuition is $13,000. Who's going to make up that difference? So there's not a level playing field there at all. So we really have to think about who is this really benefiting. And then, as he mentioned, the accountability is not there. When it comes to testing and other metrics, the accountability is not there. And so that's challenging.
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson?
Go ahead, Ms. Sharp.
Sorry.
Thank you. Good to see everybody out tonight. I'm so glad to see an almost fully packed room. Thank you for coming out. Now we need you on Tuesdays and Thursdays at the school board meetings, okay? Twice a month, okay? Because that's about the only way we're going to get some help up here on the north end. So thank y'all for having me. I know people were not happy about me supporting charters, but we've got 3 charters that are about to open, 2 in Laverne and 1 in Smyrna, and it is going to help us with the overcrowding. But this vouchers bill is a lot of sugar, a lot of waste, and it's probably going to cost us upwards to $1 billion once they get everything together. And I think it's really disingenuous that they started with the voucher issue to help the underprivileged, when Commissioner Oliver was talking about if it's $7,000, they're going to get $7,000, and the tuition, we know tuition here is anywhere up to $15,000. Those students are not going to they're not going to be able to have lunch. They're not going to have the Title I funding. They're not going to have after-school programs. They're not going to be able to do anything, even if their parents were able to close the gap on that funding. This voucher, to me, in essence, is having a car that we owe money on that we are not going to fix, that there's some issue with it we're not going to fix, and buying another car and owing money on that. That's what I think the vouchers are. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a quick update. I just heard Friday from Representative Charlie Baum where this is. I just thought everybody'd enjoy hearing that. Obviously, we've heard about this $144 million bill. This is how much chaos is happening right now in Nashville, just to keep you up to date. The House bill It's up to $500 million. I'm going to tell you why. In order to get the votes for this, this is real iffy because everyone understands you're taking money out of public education, right? Everyone can see that on either side of the equation. So in the House bill, a lot of things have been added in to try to get the votes over to do it. And it ended up to where if you do that, which was actually providing up to $20 million for capital projects for public education, we can use that money. That's some candy right there to get it passed. The problem is that would come with a $500 million price tag. Y'all, we are not projected at the state to have any additional revenue this year, nor are we in Rutherford County, which we can discuss later. So this bill is in absolute turmoil all the way. The Senate is doubtful to pass if that House bill did. So I just wanted you to know where this is at. This is still being discussed, fought, probably has no chance of having a bill on both sides getting done right now. Just wanted to give you that update.
And it's 3 different bills, the governor's, the House, and the Senate.
Yeah, so it's
They'll-
very heavily debated right now.
My sources are saying they'll do a joint resolution and come together and get it passed.
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to say that Dr. Sullivan did say this was his opinion, and he was not speaking for the board, so I am speaking for the board. We sent in a resolution protesting vouchers from the Rutherford County School Board, signed by our students. Thank you again to Ms. Sharp.
Thank you for clarifying. Does anyone else have any other comments before we move to the next question? So this next question is for Mrs. Bratton. The governor plans on providing this year $15 million to charter schools for facility costs. Can you please advise how Rutherford County Schools views charter schools' impact on the overcrowding situation being experienced by Laverne schools?
Well, that's very difficult to say because, A, we don't know how many children are actually going to be going to these charter schools. We have an idea of what they're going to be opening to try to open enrollment. The only problem that I see with charter schools and overcrowding is that these students can come from any place in Rutherford County. They don't have to come from Laverne. They can come from downtown Murfreesboro. They can come from Murfreesboro City. They can come from homeschool. They can come from many different places. So how many children we're actually going to lose out of our classrooms is very much up in the air.
Thank you. Does anyone have any other comments before I follow on?
I did, actually. So is my understanding that charter schools are primarily for elementary school students? So when we're looking ahead, those are coming out of our schools for, what, 5, 6 years? And then all of a sudden, they're all going to come back?
For now, some of the schools would like to go all the way through high school, but they don't start out that way. They do have to start usually K-5 in order to build that capacity all the way up. So right now, we are talking about elementary.
Yeah, I was just thinking in terms of in the future, it may create a little chaos when we've allocated for X amount, and then all of a sudden, there's a big rush of students coming in once they finish that 5th grade, and maybe that charter school hasn't gotten to the point of adding on yet.
That's a possibility. We just won't know until we get there.
We have the same issue with the Murfreesboro City Schools.
Okay.
Down at Murfreesboro. But
We
they,
do know how many of those kids are coming.
yeah, we do know, we do know who are coming,
got
but we
that.
do have them that come from the city schools. But it is my hope that every year that they are going to add a grade level every year. So
Will there
they'll-
be some communication between the charter and Rutherford
Yes,
County?
yes.
Oh, yeah.
Hopefully with
Oh,
numbers?
yeah.
Yes.
2 of them, yes.
Two of them
We're
are,
authorized with, yes.
yes, 2 of them we have jurisdiction over. The other one, the state has jurisdiction over. So that one probably will not have the same amount of communication.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. By a show of hands, I'm just kidding. If you did not catch, this is really on point. If you have not seen the Rutherford County Commission's Health and Education Committee meeting video from this past Tuesday, we had an unbelievably robust conversation that was really on point, asking hard questions about funding and enrollment. We could not spend enough time tonight trying to repeat what you will get if you will go to YouTube, the RCTV channel, and find the Health and Education meeting from February 27th, which was also incidentally my 25th wedding anniversary. I'm throwing that out there. And I was in the committee meeting. If you will go watch that, there is more questions answered there than we could possibly answer tonight. And I think you'll enjoy hearing from one of our actual charter schools and the superintendent and all the members of that committee ask hard questions.
All right, thank you so much. Mrs. Bratton, I have a follow-on question for you.
Okay.
Can you please share how charter schools will be enrolling students? Will they, well, you probably have answered most of this question. Will
Okay.
they accept anyone that applies, or will there be requirements that students must meet?
Charter schools do have their own way to take in their applications. They will take all applications that come to them. That doesn't mean everybody's in there, it just means they take all applications. They, if a charter school happens to have more applications than they have seats, then they will go by law to a lottery system. So that is the way that they will be filling their seats.
Does anyone have a comment to that?
I can give an update. So one of the two that we have authorized used the same exact application system we do for choice seats. So they sent out 243 possible seats of 250. They've had 99 accept. They've had quite a few decline as well because they applied for Thurman, Francis, McFadden, so kind of the same whole aspect. And then the other one is still doing their enrollment. We haven't heard yet. The part that I think is important is that in this first year, one will have 250, one's projected at 350. That's the growth that we had in September, October, and November. And so it's not going to do enough to maybe cover half a year if we open 2 a year.
They all come from the same place.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. This next question is for Commissioner Davidson and Dr. Sullivan. RCS has recently approved a comprehensive rezoning report as a means of addressing the overcrowding that exists within Rutherford County. Despite the efforts being undertaken in this initiative, it documents that overcrowding will continue to exist even in 2028. Can you please share what other strategies the RCS and county are employing to solve this problem?
I'll let you go ahead with that.
So we went through about a 16, 17-month project. First was seeing what were enrollment issues that have occurred over the last decade, but then what are our enrollment trends, looking at birth rates, a little bit of everything for the last couple years. We then looked at a painstaking view of every one of our schools to see what was capacity at every single one of our schools, and allowing an outsider to come into your building and tell you how many kids you can fit in there. You can only imagine went really well with our principals. And then we went through looking at zoning lines. And so we have truly utilized every resource that we have available as far as seats go. And that does require some students to have to drive past a school to go to another school, which is not what we want. But ultimately, we have to be able to fill our seats first before we can get additional funding. So as a director of schools, I would never want to rezone kids, but we're to that point. As far as having a plan for until 2028, unless we have new buildings, there is no plan. And there has to be more funding for more buildings, and that is something the county school system, or the school system, has used every available resource that we have. Without new buildings, I'd be lying to you if I told you there was a solution outside of that. There's not.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any comments?
And that is also an issue we struggle with. We work hand in hand with the school board, and it is a struggle for all of us. Obviously, we recently submitted a bill asking for impact fees to help us help the school. And as of right now, it looks to be dead again this year with no help from the state to help us. So we're really grasping at straws here, trying to find a way to create more revenue, because obviously the schools cannot create revenue. So that falls to this commission and all of our departments and finance to try to find another solution, because currently, I'm not sure if anyone is aware, the debt service for Rutherford County is $600 million. 500 million of those dollars are from the schools. So That's what you were talking about before earlier, that there's only so much you can borrow before your numbers fall, and that's where we're struggling.
Yes, ma'am.
If I may. I have to say that we have worked very well with the county commissioners, and they have funded everything that we've asked for. It's been a two-step that we've stepped on a few toes and not meaning to, but we have it worked out. And we have new money every year, but it's cyclical. It's not like our home budget that we get paid every week. Our county only gets paid once a year, so we only get funding once a year. And once we plan what we want to do with that money, there's no more money. So there's still plans in the pipe that we need to do, but there's no more money. So we have to wait till the next year to take a bite off of that plan, the 5-year plan. So.
Thank you. Yes, Commissioner Oliver?
And I just want to add to that as it relates to funding, public schools are funded in arrears. Now, these charter school proposals, they get their money on the front end.
Yes.
And you already noted that public schools is not fully funded. So where's the equity in that?
Thank you. Commissioner Wilson?
Thank you. I don't see it covered in the other questions, so I don't want to miss this since it was part of what they're talking about. When your property tax in the county were raised this year by 26 cents, when they were raised, let me tell you what that covered. That covered balancing the budget from a $64 million deficit of an over-appropriated budget from the previous year, and that broke us even. We have a completely balanced budget. Now, let me tell you what that appropriated for so you know where we're at. That paid for those 3 high school additions that are underway. We also put the money into debt service, enough to cover what we just approved. The elementary school on the Beatty Farm that was approved, that was money we already knew we were going to be able to approve a year ago. We knew we could cover that. Let me make sure I'm very clear. The next thing I believe that the school board has asked for is a middle school on that Beatty property. And I need to be clear, we do not have a pathway to get that money. When I say money, we're not talking about paying cash. Those days are long past us. We're talking about paying the mortgage. It will cost us about $7 million annually to borrow $100 million. We don't have that $7 million right now. We can continue this conversation as much as you want to ask, but I'm just telling you, we do not have a path forward financially on the revenue we have without the penny growing or additional revenue sources.
If I may, just real quick. That also, I know on this end of the county, so the middle school we had hoped to ask for this year. You obviously hear that's not going to happen. The high school is behind the middle school. And so I know on this area of the county that is extremely, extremely challenging, but the high school is a year behind the middle school.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? The next question is for Mrs. Sharp. How does the new Tennessee investment in student achievement funding formula assist Rutherford County in providing more resources for capital improvements to the school system?
In my opinion, it doesn't.
It doesn't.
It doesn't. I think the weighted categories per student was a good thing, so that sets aside money for English second language or students that are dyslexic or some kind of special needs. I think that was good. Ms. Rosales, who is not here tonight, did a deep dive on the budget, on the TISA, solid work, but how they calculated what we got for capital projects. It is punishment. How they
For funding feels like capital.
Yes, it does. So how they calculated it was they did it by grade bands, and they just did an average by a grade band. So Ms. Rosales had we signed a resolution and we sent it to the Hill and asked them to turn the resolution into a bill, and that has ended up in the round basket somewhere. But it really doesn't. It doesn't help us.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
There is no component in TISA for infrastructure and capital projects. So it is strictly a year behind. So Ms. Oliver mentioned it's a year behind. It is. We're funded on last year's students. And so we're running a district of 51,700 kids on what we're funded of 49,000. And that is all on the local tax base.
Yes, sir.
Just one small comment. Without TISA being approved, we would have been hurting quite a bit more. I just want to say it did provide millions of additional dollars that the BEP did not. We would have even been in worse position without TISA. So I just want to say, where it does not provide for capital projects, it does provide money for other expenses like wage increases and paying for insurance and benefits, which what happened is with inflation absolutely strangling us, all the additional funds are going just to keep our folks employed and paid where they won't leave for other counties. So I just want you to know that in fairness, if TISA would not have been approved by the state government and we were still under the BEP, we would have had to raise taxes even more just to cover last year's budget.
Thank you. The next question, we'll move on to the next question, is for Mrs. Darby. According to the 2024 Public School Review, the school spending student ratio for Rutherford County is $10,180, which is less than the state average of $12,422. Also, as of last year, the student-teacher ratio of 16:1 in Rutherford County schools is more than the state average, which is 15:1. Can you please explain why that is, and what needs to be done to have Rutherford County meet or exceed the state average?
One word I think could even answer this, which is growth, really. In the last 10 years, we are spending roughly about $1,000 more per student with the money that we have. So sorry. We're definitely spending more per student, but as Dr. Sullivan said earlier, we are not, I just totally lost my train of thought, sorry y'all. We've got $1,000 more per student coming in, but the amount of students that we have increased in such a short period of time, we're not able to keep up. We are playing catch up consistently, and it just, unfortunately for all of us, I think as we've all seen, everyone is putting their best efforts forward. I think the relationships, from what I have been told, I've only been on the school board a year and a half, but are much, much better. Everybody's working together, trying to move this train forward, trying to catch up. Unfortunately, there is such a huge gap between where we have been and where we need to be. I'm not sure how long it's going to take and how much money it would take to actually get us to that place where we are caught up. So I think the growth is just a huge factor. I think we're doing the absolute best with what we do have. I know we have converted all of the space in all of our buildings to accommodate as many students as possible. And it's a little scary, honestly, wondering as all of this building continues to occur and all these people keep coming to Rutherford County, where we're gonna put these students when we don't have the funds to build the buildings that we need to put them in. So the growth is really the biggest situation. I'm not really sure how you control that when you can't get the help with impact fees and zoning keeps changing to higher density zoning, so we're putting more people in smaller places. It's like one thing on top of another, just compounding the issue. So I think everybody's working hard, and I don't think it's gonna be a one solution situation. I think we're gonna have to hit it from multiple different angles.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything else to add?
I do.
Yes, ma'am.
Phil could probably say it better than me, being the realtor, but just as someone that has not really taken the back roads in a while, and I did. And I know when I was running for commissioner, I was told by Mayor Cole that within a 3 to 5 mile radius of Laverne, there were 13,000 permits pulled for housing within a 3 to 5 mile radius of here. So a few weeks ago, we talk about growth, I hear about growth, but I'm all over the place. So I took some back roads, and there was not one piece of land that I passed between Murfreesboro and Laverne on strictly the back roads where Waldron and all of that is, that they were not building massive subdivisions. And it just was utterly shocking to see it with my own eyes and not just hear from someone, oh, they're building here, oh, they're building here. I saw it, and it is utterly terrifying as a commissioner and also as a grandparent of a child in these schools that we're trying to help, of where we're going to end up.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Just quickly, so to answer the question of how do we catch up, Ultimately, the state funding is what it is, so everybody gets close to the same. As we've talked about, Ms. Darby, you mentioned with growth, a lot of our property tax and sales tax from the county goes towards paying for the debt ratio. It would take $114 million of extra local revenue to get us to within $200 of the state average, so that's not occurring.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay.
Smelling sauce.
All right, does anyone have anything else to add? The next question is for Commissioner Wilson. Can you please share how the county evaluates and assesses how much funding will be available for funding education?
Absolutely. I looked to my left and asked these four people and their comrades what their assessment is. So let me kind of explain how this works. It's a great question. These guys evaluate what they need. And I think Dr. Sullivan hit on maintenance of effort. Let me explain that. The way that the state protects education funding is maintenance of effort means that a county that is staying the same and or growing, the school system is guaranteed to get the same appropriated local funds, period. The only way that can change is a 3-year period of a decline and a decrease in population. The state can reevaluate that. Which what he's saying is whatever we gave them last year, they're getting that again, period. There is no argument or discussion on that. They asked for that this year.
There's no argument? You sure, Mr. Wells?
I have never argued on a state-mandated law. I tend to want to argue the things we can actually affect change on, but that's a good one. Maintenance of effort is there for that reason. So one of the things that TISA did is they were able to give back, and they did. This is the partnership between your schools and the local government, which affects you on your property taxes. They gave back 11 pennies. Right? Your property tax this year is assessed at $1.87. They gave back 11 cents, which used to be appropriated to cover that. TISA covered that extra money. They gave 10 cents back that went into debt service to help us pay the bills on these capital projects, which is buildings. Okay? They also gave us an additional penny back from the 177 from maintenance. So TISA helped them give us 11 cents of your property tax money back to go towards debt and maintenance, right? So that's how we're working together. But they evaluate, they tell us what they need, and if they need above maintenance of effort, remember I told you, and these are key things for you to understand while you're watching us over the next few months, we have a balanced budget, and we don't have additional revenue set to come in beyond what is, if the penny does not grow, which is meaning that the valuation of what our property tax penny is worth, if it does not grow, there is no additional revenue, it's flat. So if these guys say they need maintenance of effort plus the growth of the penny and we don't have growth, that money either we have to say, you're going to have to do it on what you had because we don't have it. Because guess where is the only place your county government can get money for schools from if the state doesn't give it? It's us. We are not the villain when your property taxes goes up. It is when you hit a button to vote for a property tax, you'll lose sleep. Made me sick. But what makes me sicker is to think I can't have kids falling out of windows and not having food because we can't fund the school system. We have to have enough money to pay the bills, everybody. And the property tax is the only tool your county government has. We can't raise the wheel tax enough for your tags on your car to build a school. We're simply out of options. So when you hear us discussing what we need and what these guys need, how do we assess it? They ask and we say, man, here's what we got, and we work it out. But if they need money and you want it, we have to collectively agree to take a property tax increase to fund it. It's very important for you to understand that I pay it too, and so does everybody here. We all live here. But that's the only way right now that we can afford to make any additional increases in budget or in capital projects to build buildings.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything else to add? Yes, ma'am.
I'll add, he's absolutely right. But this is the information that you need to be speaking to your elected officials about. I mean, you can't wait till it's already done. They need to hear from you. I was actually on the Hill speaking to one of our delegations and was told, yeah, y'all have a problem down in Rutherford County. I'm like, excuse me, you're a Rutherford County citizen too. We have a problem. And the challenge is our county delegation is not looking at this as a we problem. This is a we problem. And that's the way it needs to be addressed and solved.
Thank you. So I'll move on to the next question. This is for Dr. Sullivan. The mayor of Rutherford County is seeking to obtain legislative support during this session for granting Rutherford County the same authority on development taxes and impact fees that other various local governments have authority to engage in. What do you think of this idea, particularly as it relates to the school system?
So let me hit on the idea first. The idea is absolutely necessary. As Commissioner Wilson, Commissioner Oliver, and Davidson have talked about, the only avenue we have is property tax. And right now, property tax is really meant to fund the operations that you already have. It's not meant to fund additional buildings, and that's where we're struggling. Unfortunately, so last Wednesday, I was asked to go down with members of our county commission. I think we had 7 or 8 commissioners that went, and we didn't even get the bill heard on the floor. So it was in subcommittee. I had never been to the Hill before, and so to tell you that is not the way I thought government worked. It was very disappointing, to say the least, that you have an amendment and you can't even you have an elected body of nobody from Rutherford County there, and we're just asking for that ability to be able to do it for Rutherford County, and it couldn't even get a motion to be heard. And so 3.5 minutes later, all the work that we've been working on for the last 4 minutes is over. And as I think Ms. Sharp or someone said, it was dead upon arrival. And you have our mayor, several commissioners, myself there, and I was just sitting there thinking, if that's the lack of respect that you get, I wish I would have stayed in the school system and done something for kids that day. So.
Well,
Absolutely.
all right. Does
Can I
anyone
just
else?
add something real quickly?
Yes,
Thank you. Since I've been on the school board, and I think it's probably been the last 10 years, from May to August of every year, we've had about 1,200 to 1,500 students, new students, come into our area every year. 1,200 students is like a middle school. So we've grown a middle school or a high school for the last 10 years without being able to build. So I know people just, I go the same way. We see the same thing and we don't see the growth like Laura was talking about, but it's horrendous. It is horrendous. Y'all need to tell people we're closed. We're closed, 24/65, we're closed, because that's really the only way for people to stop moving here is for us to be able to get caught up. That's the only way.
And I'd like to add something there, because I've had a debate about that as well, because I'm like, why are we continuously approving this development when we don't have the infrastructure to support it? And we're being told, oh, it's against the law to not approve. No, it's not against the law, because if you have a reason why you can't support development, then why keep approving it? You don't have the schools, you don't have the roads, you don't have the firemen, police, everything that takes to run a development, then why keep approving it? So there's a disconnect there. There's a disconnect with the municipalities and with the county when it comes to approving this development.
Thank you. Anyone else? Oh, yes, sir.
This subject's just incredibly important, so we have to be clear on some stuff. So first of all, yes, I'm in real estate, and I've put my neck out and voted twice to support an impact fee. I can't tell you that that's unpopular with the lobby in Nashville. I just want to put that out before I make any other statements, because we need to be careful when we talk to each other. Let's not group each other into absolution groups. A lot of your realtors, please do not think when you hear statements from any side talking about realtors against them, how do you know that? You haven't talked to all of them. So just, there are lots of realtors, local developers, and home builders that do support an increase to an adequate facilities tax and or a discussion. There are discussions on that still alive right now. The impact fee is dead. That happened. There's no political will in Nashville to pull that, especially to get it through the entire full 99 member of the House. We only have 5 members out of 99 in the House. But let me say this, there is still some support and some life on an adequate facilities tax increase. We need anything we can get. The reason I say don't lump everyone together is we've really gotten nasty on each other and putting everyone into all realtors are against that. No, we're not. And let me clear this up about planning, because I'm on BZA in Smyrna. You only have a small amount of time. If someone has property and it is zoned to do something, roads is not actually state law. That's not enough of a reason to decline it. You can't. If people are allowed, if you have property and it's zoned a certain way, you are allowed to put on that property what it's allowed to do. You just have to obey the local codes, pull the permits. But if we actually were to turn it down, and it's not a state remember, the state controls us, everybody. The counties and the cities only have the power that the state of Tennessee says you have. We cannot do a thing without them passing a resolution saying we can, okay? They won't let us turn it down without particular reasons. Otherwise, it can be appealed, and they call it arbitrary and capricious that we denied it. You can't do that. So housing developments get approved because simply the land is allowed to do it by zone, by ordinance. If they follow the codes and pull the permits, they can do it. Y'all, we have just been discovered. When you are the least expensive county in Middle Tennessee, you are a place of refuge. You will come from Davidson County. You will leave other counties and you will come here because we are the best value in the Middle Tennessee. What's happened is we're such a great value, everyone found us. Where our schools are so good for the bang for the buck, everyone's coming here. So we can't stop that because we don't own the county. We live in the county, but we can't stop it. We all would like to, but we can't. So we've got to move forward finding solutions on how to deal with it, which is why we're here tonight.
Thank you. Thank you so much. The next question is for Commissioner Davidson. We've probably gone over this, but why is the Rutherford County capital budget not keeping pace with the increased need for more schools?
Yeah, we've kind of
Yeah.
beat that horse, but
Yeah.
let me go ahead.
Yeah, just go ahead and answer that.
I did reach out to our county finance director and wanted to pick his brain so I could make sure that I gave you like the most current information, which we've discussed a lot tonight. But I'm not sure if everyone in this room or public is aware that 77 to 79% of the Rutherford County budget goes directly to the schools. So what's left is what we use primarily, I would say, for operations, but with the growth, the inflation, and the existing capital repairs on our aging schools, it's kind of cutting into that as well. So we need the impact fees. We're clearly not going to get the impact fees. I feel like with the population, and I believe it's, what is it, every year we get anywhere from 1,000 to 1,200 new students every year. There's a need for a new school every year. The funding just isn't there. And when we're looking at 77 to 79% of our overall county budget going to the schools, and then still having to take from what we have left to help, we're not even taking into account our own facilities that need help. We need fire stations, we need a little bit of everything, a new jail. We cannot fund those things if we still are struggling to fund the schools. And obviously your education is of the highest priority, but there just simply isn't any more money. The money that would normally go into operations is strictly going for growth infrastructure at this time.
Thank you. Anyone else have a comment? Thank you. The next question is for Mrs. Sharp. What is the policy on using portables? Is there a plan to eventually remove them from utilization?
We would love to rid our properties of portables. Number one, they're very expensive, but when we don't have room, we have to put the students in a portable. Over the years, we've looked at retail space and trying to move some classes here or there. We just can't. We just spent $1 million on 10 portables late last year. And we have to have them. We don't want to use them, but we have to have them. We cannot allow the schools to be overcrowded because that in and itself causes more problems.
Yes.
They're not optimal. They're not what we want to do, but it is a quick fix for us to be able to have some more rooms for our students. Security-wise, we don't really talk about that. So if somebody has some questions, I'll talk off the record later for that.
So the next question, the follow-on question was, could you address the safety concerns that exist around having students or faculty in portables during the school day?
Right.
What was the follow-on?
Right. The follow-up is I won't discuss, we
Okay.
don't discuss our security
Security.
measures or any implementation that we have.
Or
for
any
that.
safety or anything like
Yes,
that?
ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you.
Does anyone else have any other comments? Yes, sir.
My predecessor, Commissioner Blair, told me, Phil, if you do one thing, you've got to continue the fight against trailers. Our children deserve better than trailers. You've got to continue fighting. And I'm going to tell you, my wife and I, she hears me complain all the time because just having to think about kids in trailers, I mean, it's a sheet metal building. I don't need to talk about any more than that. I mean, just going to the bathroom is a problem. You got to disrupt class, have a teacher leave. I mean, everything about it is absolutely horrific, but the only solution is building a brick and mortar building. That's the only solution. This whole conversation, if we leave here tonight unified, it's got to be that how are we going to pay for it? And you can't have a fight on one hand and say, you can never raise my property taxes, and then we say, but well, you don't want all the schools. It's impossible. Impossible. And I'm asking everyone, we got to come together, and what we need to do is have more conversations and say, here's what we can do, and here's what it would cost. Just like any family around the dinner table is going to do. We need to do this. How are we going to budget the money and do it? Because we can't get there quick. The 5-year plan is $850 million. With the way inflation is, by the time we get there, y'all, it's $1 billion. When I came into office a year and a half ago, our county debt was less than $400 million. The 5-year building plan on schools is $1 billion. We're not even talking about a jail we're going to need with a population increase. Our jail is full. This is where we are. I just want you to know the truth because we are absolutely trying our very best to at least get the information out so we can all talk about it. But we are not sitting on a bunch of money and not funding schools.
Okay.
We're not. That is not Rutherford County. That could be somewhere else, but I'm going to tell you now it is not Rutherford County because if it was, my blood pressure would be lower.
Well, thank you so much.
Can I hit on that real
Yes,
quick?
yes.
So just a couple quick points to that. We are, as Commissioner Wilson mentioned, we built from 2010 to 2013 over 20 buildings. From 2013 to 2023, we built 6. And so that is part of where we are, and it's not necessarily the county commission's fault, that's just the price of construction. The $400 million that covered $20 million or 20 years of buildings. A high school is going to cost $200 million now. And so that $200 million. So you mentioned about portables, getting rid of them. If we don't get a new middle school and a new high school, my request in the next 2 years is going to be to purchase 40 to 50 portables a year. There's no other option. We've used our seats. It's going to be 40 to 50 portables per year until we get buildings built a year, every single year.
Yes, ma'am.
And also, the struggle of no land. So the developers are snatching it as fast as it hits, sometimes before it even hits the market. So where we used to could buy land and put a nice school on it, now we may be looking at smaller plots of land and building up. If we can get it before the developers get it.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. The last question that I have is for Commissioner Oliver and Mrs. Darby. What are the various methods that a resident can use to become informed as well as to be able to express their opinions or thoughts on different situations impacting school overcrowding in Rutherford County, particularly Laverne?
I'll let you go first. Okay. I would say parents have to get involved. You don't necessarily have to show up in person. All of these meetings are televised. They're easy to watch on YouTube if you're unavailable at the time we have our meetings. Communicating with your school board members, your principals, your director of schools, and even more importantly, your state reps, your legislators. Because if we don't collectively, as Rutherford County, as Commissioner Oliver spoke to earlier, it's a we problem, and if they don't start hearing from Rutherford County, the squeaky wheel gets the grease. So we have to start really being vocal, sending emails, making phone calls, coming together, I think, as a county to really push for the things that we need that will help our community, such as the impact fees and things of that nature. The more they hear from us, the harder we are to ignore. I think it's easy, you know, as a parent, if everything is going well for your kid, you probably aren't paying attention to school board meetings. You're probably not paying attention to what's going on at the commission meetings. Everything's going well, so you're just, you know, don't rock the boat. But the problem is, this is going to affect everybody's children eventually. It's no secret, we have converted closets in the classrooms. We're using portables, as I stated earlier, like every available space we have. And with the amount of building I am seeing coming, we're out of space. There just isn't any more. There are no more closets to convert. There's only so much land we have to even put portables on. So this is a problem that really needs to be addressed, and it's going to have to be addressed from multifaceted avenues. And one of those is the community coming together, talking to our state reps and our legislators, and hearing from parents so that we understand what's going on at their particular school. We have over 50 schools. We don't all know what's happening at every school, the commissioners, the school board members, and if we don't hear from people, there's no way for us to know the ins and outs. If you're the one with the child at that school, you know better than we do what's happening in the ins and outs that day, so.
Thank you.
I agree with what Ms. Darby said, but first and foremost, I think citizens need to be registered to vote, because your vote is your voice.
Okay.
You can go to school board meetings, commission meetings. If you're not registered to vote, you're not a constituent, nobody's really gonna pay attention, totally honest. With the horrific thing that happened last year with the shooting, and all of the constituents, all of the citizens that went to the Hill to protest and want gun safety, my question was, how many of you are actually registered to vote? How many of you actually exercise your right to vote? Your vote is your voice. Like Ms. Darby said, the meetings are recorded, but show up. Let them see you. Let us see you. We want to see you. Take the 3 minutes to speak. If it's something you're in favor of or you're opposed, let us hear from you. That is important. That is most important.
Yes, sir.
So everyone in the room probably watches school board meetings. In the school board races, all kinds of social media. When I was campaigning, the number one question I had from people was, number one, why do you keep knocking on my door? The next question was, what's a county commissioner?
Yep.
Let me make sure I'm very clear. I hope you've gotten from me that money's the problem. We have a bunch of people that know what we need to do, and you can tell them what you want them to do, and they can do it. If we don't have the money, nothing happens. That's the same way in my personal life. Most people have no idea what the county commission does. They don't pay attention. Your health and education committee, we are absolutely working nonstop to have the hard discussions to get to the bottom of this thing. And most people have no idea, number one, there's even a county commission meeting, what they do, much less the health and education committee. We got one job, funding. We are not the school board. We are not curriculum. That's state stuff. Man, my job is to find the money. I'm a money man. You've got to help me. I need your help. Because no matter what great plans they have, if we don't have the money, it is going absolutely nowhere. So we have to come together on money. Y'all, funding is the problem of the next probably generation. It's funding. Please start paying as much attention or new attention to the county commission and the health and education committee and the budget committee as you do the school board. Best laid plans will absolutely fall aside if we can't pay for them. That's the fight. That's the fight.
Thank you. Before we move forward, does anyone have any final remarks that they'd like to make?
I would just agree with Commissioner Wilson. It would make my job a whole lot easier having to go and beg, borrow, and not steal. Beg and borrow the county commission to ask for things if everyone was aware of what was going on. Yes.
Yeah, our issue is not, we know what to do. We can't afford it. We'd go buy the land and build 5 schools tomorrow, and I'm going to tell you, man, that would be great. This is money. It's trying to figure out, because I don't want to tax me and you to get it.
No.
Because we're already taxed out of our minds. I mean, who can afford it? We got families that can't afford more tax, not $1. What are we supposed to do? Their kids need seats, but they're struggling at the grocery store. That's falling on us. It's a tough job. So we've got to have your help because we can't do both. We can't build the buildings, and we can't. We don't have a way to get the funds. So if anything, thank you, League of Women Voters, because you guys are having these meetings and getting the word out. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to work together. Everyone has to understand where we're at so we can work together on it. It's going to be a balance. We can't do it all, but we also can't do nothing. We have to do something. And it's going to have more costs than it does now. There is no path away from that. I don't know what that looks like right now. I'm just telling you, we're going to have to work on it together and work with us. It's the last thing we want to do is look at any Rutherford County and say the only way we can do this is for all of us to pay more. It kills me. But we're going to have that conversation, or we're just going to have to freeze and deteriorate. And I don't think that that's what we want for our future. It's not what we want for the next generation, and it's not what we're fighting with our kids and our grandkids.
Thank you.
I'll have one more thing to say to go along with what you said. It is about the money, but I cannot express enough the importance of voting, because the persons that are making decisions about the money that comes to this county are sitting up there at Capitol Hill. It is an election year. Your vote is your voice. They have the money, but it's how the money is allocated. And so you have to get out and vote.
Thank you.
I can't say that enough.
Thank you. Ms. Sharp?
Thank you. I don't want to speak for everybody else, but I believe we don't want to be in the building business. We want to be in the education business and working with our kids and doing new CTE programs and things like that. But we have restrictions on classroom sizes. We have restrictions if they're special ed. We have restrictions if they're ESL. We have to meet those. And literally, we have classrooms that have 4 classrooms in the middle of a classroom to be able to meet those requirements. So we're not, and no one has said that we are, but we're just not saying we want some new buildings. We have to have some new buildings. And we're forced to have a major building program. But
I would love not to do that on a daily
Yeah,
basis, as
yeah,
you all would
yeah.
as well.
because Ms. Darby and I we've looked at 8 or 9 pieces of property up here on the north end. It's so many plates that are spinning at one time. We get a lead on this, and by the time we talk to them, it's already bought. Or this one over here is up for sale, but the family doesn't want to sell it. There's so many moving pieces when building and getting the land, and then getting to the point, the sales cycle, as they say, our building cycle, funding and everything, and getting to the point where we're opening it. We are shortening that space, but there's only so much we can do. Like Commissioner Wilson says, we've got to have the money.
Thank you. Yes, Ms. Darby.
I would just like to bring up one more thing that hasn't really been talked about because we've been focused on new building, but if you've watched any of the school board meetings, you know I'm passionate about it. We have some very old school buildings in Rutherford County. Several that within the next few years are going to be in need of major renovation. And when we talk about the deferred maintenance, we're talking about roofs and HVAC systems, not necessarily a renovation of an entire building. And so when Commissioner Wilson speaks about the funding being the issue, it really is an issue, and it's not just for the new schools, but it's for some of these older schools that are in desperate need of some major renovating. So it's also something else to think about, that it's not just a new school building problem. We also need the funding to take care of our older buildings as well.
Thank you. Yes.
I just want to give you one action item. So this is a copy of our current budget. This is available publicly to everybody. So is every budget we've passed for 2 decades. Here's what I want to do. To make it easier on everybody in this room, if you'd like to just get acquainted with the budget and what you're looking at, come see me. I'm going to give you my card. It has my cell phone number and my email address. If you will email me, I will send you the direct link to get this copy, a PDF, so it's easier for you to navigate to, and send me an email and ask a question. Because I want you to see where the pennies go and what's going on and help any way I can, because once you guys understand, you can pass it on to your friends, and it just goes on from there. And then everyone understands. And then these things that we're hearing about. You know, before I got in here, I didn't know where every penny went. Now that I do and I see what we need, it's a bit frightening. But at least I understand it, so I know what the need is and I know where to go. But I'm happy to help you with it. Come see me. I'm going to hand you my card. It's got my information. Send me an email, text me. Let me send you a link and start taking a look at this and let me help you with any questions that you've got. I'm happy to do it because we're all in this together. We really are.
Thank you. So I would like to thank each of you for your responses to the questions. The program will now transition to having audience participation. So I will now turn the program over to Megan Carter, co-president of the League of Women Voters, so that she can lead our discussion.
And we do have a couple of minutes left in the program for any questions that the audience might have. What I would ask is that if you're comfortable, come up to the microphone. Otherwise, our TV folks cannot hear you or see you. Also, I would ask that you keep your comments brief and your questions targeted, and we'll rely on our experts, if that's okay, to answer these questions. Anybody have a question so far? Who wants to start? Well, let's let the famous guy start.
So, my question is more towards the county commission. So, cities are limited as far as moratoriums they can do. Typically, it's tied around water, sewer capacity, and schools, if you run the school district. And I know we've had conversations about the impact fee, about incorporating that into city impact fees, which we can't do because we don't run the schools. What are your thoughts on the county for the unincorporated areas that y'all control, putting a moratorium in place? That stops the building. Now, that doesn't handle the whole county, just the unincorporated areas. And that gives y'all leverage to bring the Builders Association, the Realtors Association, the state delegation together to try to find a better solution versus just getting a 25% on top of the adequate facilities tax. Thoughts?
I have two. Number one, we're right at the end of Plan Rutherford that's giving us, they're going to be delivering us a comprehensive plan of what we're looking to do with those areas, including the agriculture areas, because one of the big concerns we've had has been we need to protect our agriculture. You know, we need to protect the percentage we have because we need local farmers in this area, especially we're going to have food issues at some point. We need to have access to grow our own food. So let me bring up that as far as a moratorium, I'm always going to be a no on a moratorium. I don't think that's ever the solution to dealing with it. However, I want to look at the Plan Rutherford plan first, find out what we're looking at, because there will be some changes made to how we're protecting some areas, agricultural based, and we need to agree on that before we even considered what we do, because you said it right already. What happens for everybody, just so you know, when you have a new area that there's a subdivision approved that's in unincorporated, if you run sewer out there, there's an annexation application. He's right, it goes into the cities normally, is what happens a lot. And he's right, we have very little building in the unincorporated areas right now. It's mostly in the city limits. But I'm a no on a moratorium. I'd like to find a better answer than ever denying someone any opportunities to do what the zoning's for. That's my personal opinion. I'd rather find a solution otherwise. But even particularly, I would like to see this plan that's coming out, I believe in the next few months, we're going to find out what the plan was. And it had a lot to do with future school growth, as you guys know. Y'all had some input to Plan Rutherford, so I'd like to see what their comprehensive plan looks like. And decisions, as you know from our County Planning Commission, they are discussing that exact thing, but they want to see the plan as well. So that word has come up in the Planning Commission in the county. They want to see what we're doing as far as I know with that comprehensive plan first to see what we need to do.
Thank you.
Mayor Cole, if I can, just real quick. I think you're spot on. 25% increased adequate facilities tax is going to take us 5 years to be able to build a small elementary school. Any additional revenue is nice, but it's not going to do anything that we need as far as big revenue to get things done. Totally agree.
Hello, my name's Leanne Carmack. I've moderated one of these before, last time with you, Mr. Wilson, and I follow this issue closely, especially the school vouchers. I did not support charters, and I don't support religiously affiliated charters, but I do see the need for charters in our growth perspective. My question is, we know the state has the money. You guys are putting the burden on the taxpayer rather than yelling at your legislators to give us the money. And you speak about, we need money, we need money. We're not the people to get the money from. It's the state. So, as Ms. Oliver says, you've got to vote, because the people in the legislature are holding the purse strings, you guys. So, what are your thoughts about holding public officials and elected public officials more accountable? And you guys speaking up, because I've written to every representative in Murfreesboro. They're all voting for the voucher system. So hold their feet to the fire. You guys have more power than me writing a letter.
I promise you, we have yelled at them.
Well,
Agreed.
yell louder,
I promise you. we
because
have.
I'm yelling with you now.
I'll tell you that Director of Schools is is a larger voice than I guess I realized. And so
Yes.
being vocal about some of these things ended up getting our county mayor a phone call for me to not do those type of things, which I will continue to do because it is my job to advocate for education in the school system, not what's politically the most favorite thing. So.
Exactly. So please speak up, you guys, because they are hearing from us, but they're still not siding with your constituents and your counties and the people you're representing.
They
So-
need more phone calls, more texts.
Yes.
More emails. And they just can be short and sweet. You can just say, I'm not for vouchers, I'm not for this, or I'm not for that.
I've got everybody's phone number on my speed dial. I call them almost every day.
Yeah. I promise you, every single one of us, I mean, I can show you texts where I have sent texts and said, please do not vote for this. This is going to be detrimental for our school system.
And so when this happens, because I think as much as we're fighting, and I'm fighting hard with you guys, I think it's going to pass.
Agree.
And so are we going to hold these politicians accountable when this passes and when we turn into Arizona, where people are now making up students just to get the funds? It's a totally fraudulent
I'll be at
scheme.
the Senate hearing on Wednesday.
Great.
So
I'll be watching
I'm
you.
not asked to testify. I was just
Yeah.
asked one of 11 superintendents
Well,
to be
you
there, so I'll be
can't
there.
get to, I mean, it's hard to get to testify anymore either, so I guess there's no question there, but please, everybody, speak louder, because it is gonna hurt our community.
I will say, for the 1100th time. Your voice is heard at the ballot box. We need candidates to step up and run, because a lot of these races are unopposed, and you need to vote. You need to vote. Voter education, voter mobilization, because contrary to popular belief, these legislators are not speaking for the majority. Because a lot of Tennessee voters don't even go to the polls. So they're really speaking for the minority. But voter education, voter registration, voter mobilization, we need to get people involved, engaged, and to the ballot box and vote.
Thank you.
Hey, Oliver Mann. I second your motion, and I would expand it to say, run for office. I think it's wonderful that you got these folks here. See, we got school board, and we got county commission, and we got the all that stuff. Here's what you don't have. But this is like a bus. You can do another one of these in 20 minutes. Another bus. Where's the state legislator? Yeah. Where's the federal legislator? Mm-hmm. You know, invite Marsha Blackburn, invite Desjardins, invite Green. Mm-hmm. All right? Because there's a lot of people. Do you think schools across this country aren't having problems? Schools across this country are problems. I'm a retired Air Force Light Colonel. I've moved around a lot. Probably lived in 20 different places. You live out west. They got something called ranges and townships. Does anybody know what that is? You're educated. You probably should know. Ranges and townships says the land is broken up into a big old checkerboard. There's sections, quarter sections, quarter sections, and education gets land that's earmarked for them. It's set aside for them. Now, we don't have anything like that here. Maybe we could. Maybe we could, all right? You go out west. You go into like rural Texas, you know, and they don't have a lot of money, and they have a lot of kids, and they've got to build schools. And I don't know what they call them around here, but out west we call them Butler buildings, steel buildings, all right? They seem to be a little less expensive than the brick and mortar and the granite and the marble and the brass and all that other stuff. I'm sure that you would have neighborhoods that would throw a fit if you put up a Butler building when everybody else has got a brick and mortar building, but you know what? They are cheaper.
We call those portables.
Yes.
No, they're not portables. It's a huge building. It's a huge building. I mean, you've got a vacant State Farm office down in Murph. How many square feet is that thing?
It's too big, and
It's too big.
It's too big. It's too big. In that building, there's an 8-year contract on that from another State Farm.
I
that you
am
would
so
have to pay out
glad that you have
money.
all the details on that. That's great,
Yeah.
because you're thinking. You're
Yeah,
thinking
'cause
about all
trust
the
me,
solutions.
we looked
we
at
do not
every
look
single way we
Okay.
could use that building.
Now, and I tipped my hand earlier, I'm going to use euphemisms. You know what those are, I'm sure you do. We've got a lot of newcomers. Some of them need a little bit of help with English as a second language. I'm not going to ask how many there are in the school district. I don't know if I'd even get a good answer. But I will ask,
7,600.
how many ESL teachers is that? I was going to ask ESL teachers.
Divide it by 35, I can give you an answer real quick.
35, wow.
So, over 200.
All right, so that is a burden. You know, welcoming guests, you know, you wanna treat your guests right when they come. But it costs money, and they take a seat. And the president and his administration has decided that we're just gonna invite everybody. Well, everybody costs. How much money are you getting from the federal government to offset those additional seats? I think I know the answer. I think it's zero, isn't it? That's kind of a shame. I wonder if Senator Blackburn or Congressman Desjardins would have an opinion about that, whether or not they could go fight for Tennessee on the floor of the Senate. All right, are these reasonable questions?
They are, too. As a school director, my job is to educate all kids regardless of where they come from. So
You know what?
I'm not getting involved in that immigration issue.
I went to Iraq 3 times for all the good it did, and there's one picture, and I know there's other people want to talk.
There are other folks who would like to speak.
Yes, sir.
Somebody catch me afterwards about the three little girls in their black and white gowns cutting through the storage field to get to school for the first time in their lives.
Thank you. Can I just do a follow-up as it relates to federal funding? Because you got a state legislator that's refusing federal funding for a lot of things. So we still have to think about that.
Who's that?
Federal funding is available, but then you have legislators that are refusing federal money. When it comes to Medicaid expansion, health care, talking about refusing funding for education, things of that nature. So there are federal funds that are available that there's discussions about refusing federal funding. So just having federal funding available doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to come into the state to alleviate the problems.
Bright light fixes that.
My name is Mariah Phillips, and one of the things I want to speak to, and I'm just going to be brief. When I walk along the Greenway in Murfreesboro, and instead of seeing the birds chirping and the green that's supposed to be along the Greenway, I now see the back of a Costco and the freeway and the gun range. And so I think about, I've talked a lot about smart development and building in our county. And, we move a lot of these large businesses here and we give them great tax breaks when Costco comes to town, but then they also bring in many of their employees to take those good jobs. And they also bring their 3 cars and their 2.5 kids. And since money is the issue, and this is more for our county commission and planning commission, I know was mentioned earlier, but when are we going to stop giving those tax breaks to those large corporations and help and hold them responsible for paying some of the fees that the taxpayers are carrying the burden for now? And so that's kind of a question for the county commission, but I think that it would be really valuable to reconsider our tax dollars going to our schools and our citizens instead of the businesses that are bringing in their own, more citizens with them.
May I answer that? Do you care? Do you care if I answer? Look, it's the IDB board, and we've been trying to get a seat on the IDB board, Industrial Development Board, for years because we don't have a voice in that. And yes, they bring people here. We're closed. We don't need anybody here. We don't need to give anybody any more tax breaks because if they give a $2 million tax break, half of that money should have come to the school system. There's a pilot program at Nissan that I've talked about for 2 or 3 years now. Nissan here in Smyrna has the tax break, and they don't have to pay anything. And arguably, probably our students are their workforce. If you go one county over to Williamson County, they have to pay an infrastructure fee and a school tax over there. What's the difference between their kids and our kids? There is no difference. They're better funded, but their IDB board is making them pay that money. And we've got plenty of industry here. We don't need anybody else to come here.
I'll give Ms. Sharp credit. She brought this up 2 years ago, and then we brought it up again this year.
I've been fussing about it for.
We've gotten our hands slapped every time we bring it
Yeah.
up, but we'll
And
probably bring
so-
it up again,
So if anybody has any inroads, please go get on the IDB board and help us out. That's what we need. It's not us. We don't have anything to do with that.
I do have to speak up and say something.
Oh, I knew it.
Again, I have a problem with grouping and absolutions. There are case-by-case situations. I'm not defending any of them or even being particular. But for instance, the town of Smyrna and the county, we just approved a TIF for Stewart's Landing for that development. That is going to bring a $5.98 to $1 investment cost to receiving ratio. That is 6 to 1. An IDB board anywhere in the country, if you get $3 to 1 on your investment, you're back in your community, you're going to dive at that. This is 6 to 1. You have to. So what I'm saying is, it's individual. I can't answer for everything. If the state gives a break, that's the state. But I can tell you that you look at each individual application and say, what is the development? How many jobs? What's the real return? A 6 to 1 return, because here's the deal, and I have to be real careful with my words here, because I understand the way you feel, giving tax breaks to people and we don't get the money. But you cannot do absolutions. You must look at each one and say, what are they bringing? What's the job? Because I'm thinking about all the parents that say, my kids cannot afford to live in Rutherford County. Then I've got to help you get 6-figure paying jobs for your children to stay here. I can't do that if we just stop. We can't stop. If we stop, we die, and the kids will never have a house here. So it's very complicated. It's not this easy. So I just want to make sure I understand every side of this. I don't want to give tax breaks to people and companies to come in and they exploit us. But we also have to look at creating jobs and opportunities so our kids can stay here, and they've got to have high-paying enough jobs because they are going other places. They are going to Williamson, they're going to places. You have to fight to get enough business to come here that pay enough wage to have our kids come. We can't keep just having jobs that pay $40,000 and less. They got to pay more. So what I'm saying is I hear you. And we do not need to give breaks where we're being exploited and there's something nasty at it. But please, everybody, no absolutions. Take each application's merit based on what it does for your community, which is why your local government is so important. That they are looking at that application saying, this is worth us making. A TIF investment, by the way, is only in infrastructure, meaning public access roads and sidewalks that the developer gets, but he builds all. It's very complicated. But you've got to trust some of the people doing it and ask us questions about it. When you've got a return like that, not doing it would be worse. And I'll make one more comment. Seward's Landing, most of you don't know, that is R6. That was absolutely zoned for apartments. If that did not go to a commercial development that's going to pay back not only hotel, motel tax, property tax, and sales tax, 50% of your sales tax, wherever you spend it, in whatever county you spend it in, goes back directly to education in that county. If you go to that outlet mall in Antioch and you spend your money, 50% of your tax money goes to Metro. If you just come across the line and go to BJ's, right here in Laverne, 50% of your tax dollars go to fund education in Rutherford County. Do you see how important it is? That is money staying in your pocket and not coming out of our pockets, but you got to spend it here. If we don't have Costco here, and I have no idea what breaks they got, but people were going to Costco in Franklin right and left. At least they stopped. And they're still into the Costco here, and at least we're getting 50% of the money for education. Do you see how complicated it is? So please, everybody, help me. Don't go into absolutions. Go into a case-by-case thing and figure out, is it really going to help the county, or is it really going to help the business, and then make your decision accordingly. It's very important.
He knows me from the last one. As I get closer, but
She actually pops me in the back of the head.
I just want to make sure that everybody that has a question has an opportunity to express that. Yes, ma'am, go ahead.
Thank you. We're seeing, there's a lot of national conversations about corporations and hedge funds purchasing single-family homes, and I'm just curious if we're seeing any effect through the school board and your budgets with these corporations purchasing these homes.
From a school system perspective, that'd be so far out of our realm that we wouldn't know unless, I don't even know how we would know it.
Okay. Well, because I want to answer your question, but not necessarily on where it hits us is it's how many kids are in the house. Because here's what we have with multi-generational families. You have a situation that we've got multiple generational families living in one house because they can't afford to live on their own. Here's your problem with your tax collection system. Your tax system goes back generations that was built around a single family home and that with 1.5 kids. That's what you're built on. Well, because of the high cost of housing, we have multiple families living in a home. Remember, let's just make the math easy. Let's say $10,000 per child per year for education, guys. That is what it is. Let's say it's 70-30. Tissa, we're getting 70%. We kick in $3,000, right? If you have 2 kids, that's $6,000, right? You're only paying the county less than $2,000 in taxes. You're already, that household, just that one with 2 children, you're already being subsidized by someone else that doesn't have kids in the system. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? The problem with what you're saying is as we get in more rental housing and things like that, and depending on the amount of people in the house, we have a new problem that we've never experienced, which is an antiquated tax system. We don't have single families in homes. We have multiple families going into a dwelling because they can't afford to live on their own. The system is not designed to pay for that. This is a new problem we do not have a solution for, and I'm going to tell you, I never shut up about it because it's happening now, and it's not going to get any better soon. And later on, I'm like, if you don't start discussing the fact that our tax system was built on a style of living that we don't have anymore, if you don't start having those discussions, how are we going to pay for anything?
Good question.
Spot on. I will say one outside of Laverne, Smyrna, Stewart's Creek is also where we are seeing some of our largest number of families who are double, triple, quadrupling into one house, but that house is only paying property tax for 7 or 8 kids. And so, spot on.
Thank you so much.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Luis Mata. First of all, I want to thank you all and also the League of Women Voters for coordinating such a pertinent discussion. I do just want to reiterate and quickly point out that whatever the reason may be, there is no one from our state delegation behind me or in this room tonight. Whatever the issue may be or whatever the circumstance might be, they clearly did not prioritize this tonight. And I think that should be noted. And, time after time, it's been made loud and clear that they don't have their finger on the pulse of the real issues impacting our local communities. From going against our local leaders' calls to oppose Governor Billy's voucher scam, which siphons public tax dollars away from our already underfunded public schools, even though 90% of Tennessee students attend public schools, to dragging their feet and neglecting to take much needed action to provide the real solutions, such as impact fees, to equitably and responsibly fund our growth. This is a clear pattern of leadership failure during a time when it is so urgent for all of us to be coming together and working together, as Commissioner Wilson mentioned, to solve these real issues. The real issues that should not be political and the real issues that should not be divisive. So my question is, to you all, what message do you have to our state leaders? Thank you.
That's my problem. I'm just going to be honest about it. I have a text to my phone from Robert, man. Robert Stevens said, man, I wish I could be there. We're going to be in session all night. I mean, he literally texted me before I'm coming here. So what I want to say is whatever you want to say about what they're doing and their total job, that's fine. But to say why they're not here tonight, I'm just being honest, man. The text says right here, I had hoped to get to the town hall, but we were going to be in session for hours. It literally says that. So I'm just saying, they couldn't be here if they wanted to. I'd say it for you too if you were elected, man. I just have to speak the truth. I'm sorry. We can talk about what they're doing or not doing. It's just someone said, house. I'm just saying with priorities, that's not fair, man. If someone did that to me, I would hope they'd speak up and say, well, Wilson's in a house session. He can't make it. That's all. I just had to say it. I'm sorry. It's just only fair. I'm just trying to make sure everyone needs to deal with each other fairly, you know, and everyone should be accountable, everyone for their actions. But
And for the record, the commission did have all of our delegation to our courthouse. We had a big presentation. We talked about the schools. We talked about the impact fees. And here we are. So while everyone screams, we have more pull, we should yell, we should email, we should call, we had them there in person. We have emailed. We've put together so much, and in 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
And those same delegates were there.
Correct.
They were there. They've been in our house, and we've shown videos, we've had conversations, we've presented numbers, and here we are.
You name it.
Here we are, begging for help.
well, and let me say this: no matter what happens or who's elected, you got five out of 99 from this county. I mean, man, the political will in Nashville, you got to get the other votes. I'm not defending our 5 or any 5. I'm just saying there are 94 other people in that house that you got to get a majority vote. And everyone in here that runs for House, and if you make it, you're going to have the same pressure. You got to get a majority vote. You got to understand that. Everyone wants to come in and say, I won't go in and slash the budget and save taxpayers. Try doing that in Education County Commission. You have the maintenance of effort. You can't cut it. The number one thing happens when people run against you is, man, I'm going to go in there and we're going to cut the budget and slash them. I'm going to say, you can't.
It's the legal minimum.
We
There's nothing you can cut.
have legal minimums on most of the services we provide. There is no cutting it. The only area we can cut, this is horrible, it is nonprofits. If we start cutting money to nonprofits, to some of them that are actually food banks, that's a community issue. We're helping give those guys some. It's little money. It's not large dollars. But my point is, everyone wants to come in and say, I'm going to go in and do this. But do you really know you can do it? Be very careful. Be very careful. I'm glad I didn't talk too much when I ran in and said, I want to keep taxes low. I never said no tax increase, because how in the world could you think you could do that? Being responsible and keeping your taxes low, I hope I prove to you tonight, is something I am absolutely committed to doing. But I'm also committed to saying to you, if we need schools, we need to build them. Let's talk it out together and say, hey, do we need to put a few more bucks in? Are we willing as a community to do it? If you're not, you're not.
Can I also, Dr. Sullivan, I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, but could you speak a little bit so that the community can understand how we're such a large county, but a lot of the decisions that are made aren't based off of the large counties. They're based off of some of the smaller ones.
Yes, and so that was a great point. So there's 99 House members and 20-something Senate members. 33 Senate members, and when you look at it from our perspective, even if we had delegates that were out there, representatives, most of your power in this state is in your rural districts, just by the sheer volume. And so when you talk about getting consensus, I agree 100%. I'd argue I wish that our elected officials would be more of an advocate, and that would be all that I
Just had the 5 to be collectively.
That would be a great advocacy.
Supportive.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Yep. That would be awesome.
Yeah.
And I do just want to note that the House floor session ended at 6:13 tonight. So.
Yeah, I mean, that text was like 5 o'clock or something. I knew we started at 6. Right. I was just being fair. I'm not picking on by. I'm just saying, like I said, I would hope if someone said something about me, then someone would say something, because they literally could not get here from Nashville.
So what you're saying is they could have been here.
Yeah.
They were done an hour and a half ago. They could have come straight here.
Man, that's real tough. You're being tough on them. You're being tough. I know it's fine. Just, you know, you don't know about the conversations afterwards or what's going on. Just come on, man. Just be fair.
I would agree. Are we gonna go down? Or you want me to stop?
I think we're preparing to wrap it up.
Okay, well, I will agree that someone could have been here. Someone could have been here, whether they were invited or not, someone would have been here. And like I told you all, I had one of them say, y'all have a problem. And I'm like, you're a Rutherford County citizen, we have a problem. So, I'll leave it at that.
So, Ms. Davison, do you have a comment? I'm going to go down the line. Ms. Sharp.
Thank you. I have one question. Everyone who is of age, raise your hand if you're registered to vote. So I think everybody in here is registered to vote. Yeah,
And
tomorrow.
tomorrow is
Go vote
an
tomorrow.
election day.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for having us.
Ms. Darby.
I just want to say thank you for having us. Thank you to y'all for showing up. It is truly heartwarming when we see people actually show up and start to care about issues and really start trying to get involved, because without the involvement of the community, these few people, as much as you think we might have pull, we don't have anywhere near the amount of pull if the community actually came together and did it.
Thank you. Ms. Bratton?
I want to thank everyone for having us. This was lovely. I didn't get to come last time, but Bobby was kind enough to invite me to come back. And then I want to say one other thing. As a former teacher, the greatest joy is to have someone in the audience that was your student.
How many?
The biggest, I just have one. But you saw her at the very beginning. Mary Catherine belongs to me.
Thank you. And Dr.
I'll just
Sullivan.
add that, again, echo everyone's sentiments for having us here, but I think this whole community is in dire straits to where we truly have to look at it of, if we want the education system that we have had for decades, then it's going to require investment. Otherwise, we're not going to have the education system. And I've lived my entire life here in this community, and it terrifies me, but you have to have seats for kids in order for them to be successful. And that's why this was so important.
Okay.
Okay, just a couple of more minutes of your time, if you don't mind. First of all, on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Murfreesboro and Rutherford County, I really want to thank all of you very much for taking the time. You have shared such extraordinary information and insights and thoughts and passion and wisdom about what's important and what next steps we need to take as a community. So we're very blessed to have you, and we thank you very much for doing that. We especially want to thank you guys as well. You all, like them, have families and jobs, and for you to take the time to come and be with us tonight. We really, truly value that and appreciate it. You do really need to get your voices heard, though. I think what the commissioner said was really important. Voting's important. Speaking to them, speaking to our legislators, that's what the League of Women Voters is all about. That's what we do across the state. And we have an advocacy committee, so if you have the bill numbers for that funding that you were talking about, adequate facilities, please let us know, and we will get that word out across the state to support it. And Dr. Sullivan, love to learn more about the impact fees and why that did not go anywhere. That's very disappointing and discouraging, and we need to work on changing that from a statewide perspective. I also wanted to thank Commissioner Wilson for recognizing us for doing this, but particularly the Mayor Cole, and Commissioner Hope immediately sent me an email and said, hey, you're doing that in Smyrna, we want it in Laverne, okay? And I said, really? And they said, yes. And he would not back down. He just said, you are coming here, and neither did the commissioner. So you thank those two political leaders in particular for insisting that we work hard to bring this forum to all of you. And so with that, again, we want to thank each and every one of you for your leadership and your support and your commitment to our education and our children and our whole community. And want to thank all of you for being with us this evening. Have a great evening. Stay safe. Drive home. And remember tomorrow's election day.